All righty, guys. Hey, I know it's early in the morning, so I wanted to just wake you guys up, get some blood flow to that upper body, get some blood flow to that core. Now we get some blood flow to the brain. So you guys be alive and alert this morning during this presentation. So, first of all, this is a whole new world. So, what are your new responses? You can't go about the same way of doing things when the environment does not allow for it. So, y'all know the definition. If you do the same thing over and over, expecting the same, expecting different results, what do they call that? Right. You feel me? So, same thing here. So, what's going on as you guys see with this environment that, this new workplace environment, all these, all this way of doing things, you're seeing different things with people that are going on that are new. Like people that was once normal in your workplace, quote unquote normal, are no longer normal. How many of you guys are experiencing that? And we got some hands back in the back there. Like, you was like, man, I thought this person was good. Now COVID didn't hit, election time didn't hit, all of this all at the same time. And guess what? Those people are not quite normal anymore. So you guys have to approach those people different. And you have to work with those people different. Because you're thinking, okay, I need that old person back that I had 3 years ago that was leading me in sales. I need that person to come on back, but that person is not that person anymore. And it's due to life circumstances. And it's due to a lot of little things sometimes that we don't even look at or we don't even think about, because sometimes we get so caught up in the task and getting the task done that we totally forget about the holistic person. Because here's the thing. You have to create an environment in which people feel safe, empowered, accepted, and valued in order to get results. That's just plain and simple, because a lot of people will go above and beyond in their jobs if they feel respected, valued, and and their work is appreciated. Okay. So, but I'm gonna start off. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about myself, give you a little bit of background. Deborah, thank you for the introduction. You're wonderful. She's, like I said, we got to know each other through fitness, and man, we've over the years we did Relay for Life stuff together, and we've always been very passionate about the why and the YMCA here in Hollister. I just love the YMCA, period. No matter what, because it does so many things for so many different people and gives so many people, that may be on the low socioeconomic spectrum, a place to go be healthy and a place to bring their kids, a safe place to bring their kids. So it's always been, I've always been very passionate about the why. Deborah has been too, and so we always had that common interest with that, and the philanthropy, and just she's just a great person, man. So like, I know y'all know that. If you know her, y'all know she's a great person. Give her a round of applause real quick for me. All righty. So here's a little bit about me here. Harris Multifaceted. That is my business that I started. It was inspiration during this COVID time. I've made up in my mind, even though I was suffering from depression during the time of COVID, I'm wired a little bit different. I will tell people that. I have, when people say fight or flight, I fight. I don't fly away from anything. I fight. Even though I smile all the time, you wouldn't think that about me, but I'm a fighter. So after my brother passed away in April, right after I got back from the disappointment of having COVID cut my football season short in Italy, I was a head coach in Italy for a professional football team there, and I was looking forward to going there, winning the championship, and touring Europe and just exploring all over Europe and doing all these great things and stuff like that. And that didn't end up happening. I got back home. But when I was in Italy, my brother had a stroke and a heart attack. One of my brothers did. And on my last day of quarantine, my brother passed away from that. And when I was quarantining in the United States. And so through that, me and him used to always joke about starting a family business. And that's how Harris Multifaceted began to uproot itself. So it was just like motivation. I had to fight, because for my mental sanity, also I decided to go to therapy and find out I had ADHD. Apparently, everybody in the world knew I had ADHD except for me. But I was diagnosed with hyperactivity and inattentiveness. But I had always found ways of coping with that was natural ways of coping And I didn't even know it. And part of that was just keeping busy all the time. I always created stuff for myself to do. Whenever I needed to focus, I always got coffee. Didn't know why I would always drink coffee when I needed to focus. Did not know why. I had been doing it since college, or I would get caffeine during that point in time. Anybody know the main, everybody know that Adderall is a stimulant, right? So when my therapist told me that, I was like, wow, because she was one to recommend pills. And I was like, no, I don't like, I'm a holistic person. And she was asking, what was I doing? I said, well, I drink coffee a lot and I drink green tea a lot and I'm still able to sleep. And she's like, well, you're actually, those Adderall is a stimulant, da 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 da. And I'm like, oh, okay, then that makes sense. So that gives me that focus that I need on that. And plus, I do stuff like ashwagandha. So if you got anybody ADHD, yeah, I'm giving y'all some little stuff. Maybe you can write down to help them out a little bit. Ashwagandha, holy basil, turmeric, ginger. So I do all that stuff in the morning, and probiotics too, along with my coffee. And I'm able to focus a lot. So, but in that, it just got my mind rolling. And I decided to start Harris Multifaceted. And that was the birth of that, the death of my brother. And that motivated me, and even in depression, I found a way to I'm gonna fight. Oh, gunning. I don't care. I'm gonna fight this. I'm gonna fight through this thing. And so some of you guys have employees like that, like me, that say, hey, I'm gonna fight through this. I don't care what's going on. So give them more work to do if they're asking for it. If not, if they not fighting, but they flighting, you have to come up with ways to help them find balance so they can now get stuff done. Okay. So there's a little bit about me there. Deborah already talked about a little bit about me already. And I always like to tell people on that last part that I'm a hustler with tons of life experience. And that's what it is. I've worked a variety of different jobs, worked with all different types of people, from high socioeconomic people to low socioeconomic people. I've spoke to high socioeconomic people, to low socioeconomic people from all over the world. I've been to Turkey and Italy coaching football, so I've had a chance to speak before a lot of people, diplomats and stuff like that and everything, and like events in that type of environment and stuff where, talking about American football and different stuff, because our consulate and stuff. So we had a big event when I was in Italy, and I had a chance to speak before a lot of distinguished people in Italy and different things. So I just always like to tell people, just kind of the background of the different types of people, the different types of personalities and stuff that I've been able to encounter and have relationships with in order to help you understand, here's how I drew some of my conclusions, along with my formal training and personalities, emotional intelligence, etc. And then, like I said, the holistic approach comes from yoga. I'm a 200 RYT yoga instructor too. So I do believe in holistic, coming from the inside, learning about yourself, understanding, embracing your emotions, and doing practical things to help your body and mastering yourself. I always tell people, before you lead other people, you have to learn how to master yourself, and you have to learn about yourself. So, all righty, y'all. So why is behavioral health so important? So I decided to solicit my buddy Mike Tyson here. So, seriously, seriously, when a person is mentally and emotionally struggling, it makes it hard to function on a task. The days of just working to get by, and it's a job long gone due to the complexity and fast-paced workforce. Hiring and training employees is just as much as a half-year salary. So seriously, that's what happens. So yeah, I like to do Mike Tyson impressions and stuff. So but at the same time, but seriously though, when a person is mentally, emotionally strong, it makes it hard to function. And you guys have probably dealt with that yourselves. Where it's just like, wow, I can't focus. No matter how bad I want to do this, I can't do it. And understanding, a lot of your, if you look at your papers and you look at your financial, your analysts, as far as, looking at that total paperwork, it can cost a half your salary when you got people funneling in and out, because you got to do training. So you got to pay somebody to train them. You may have to give a person overtime to train somebody else that's newly hired. That costs money there. Also, along with that too, you got to pay for training materials. If you also pay for personality tests and different stuff like that, you have to pay for all of that. And so now that list goes on and on. Every new hire, they have to have some type of training. And that's going to cost you money. And if they have to, like, say, for instance, if you have a central location in another city or a training center in another city, guess what you got to do? You got to do what? Send them there. You got to pay them for what? Huh? What all y'all got to pay them for? I need to hear y'all now. Come on now. Y'all louder than that. Let's go. Come on. You got to pay them for what? Travel. There you go. You got to pay them for their time. And sometimes, have y'all even noticed when they traveling, they first couple of weeks of paycheck be like they get that extra overtime, don't they? They're being put in a 60-hour week in a minute because of training. And so guess what that's doing to you? Costing you dollars. So the bottom line of that, it can cost a lot of money to train. In one research study by the Harvard Business Review in 2016, issues can cost up to $8,000 a day by eroding trust, reducing output, reducing innovation, lowering motivation, and cohesion of their work group. Think about it. If you're working in a company where people are not highly motivated to get work done, what does that equals as far as production? Drops, slows it down. So when you have slow production, what happens? You don't get things done. You go out and get a new customer and the production is slow, then guess what happened to that new customer? They get what? They get upset. Then when they get upset, guess what they start doing? Yeah, they start looking for somebody else. Then after they start looking for somebody else, then they tell somebody else about how slow you are. Ooh. Then you send your salesperson out there to go get some more customers. Guess what begins to happen then? They be like, nah, I heard y'all was slow. Heard y'all got some stuff going on. And then you're like, doggone it. Doggone it. Doggone it. Now we got to come up, now we got to sit down and we got to have some extra meetings now to figure out a new approach, a new game plan. Do we need to hire some more people? And now you got to do, manpower. You got to go through more paperwork. You got to create something new that might cost some more money. You got to bring in a consultant. You got to do this and you got to do that. All because you had an unmotivated group of people that caused production to slow down. Now y'all see how that domino effect works? That's why this is so important to nip it in the bud quick, because that eroding trust, reducing that output, reducing innovation. Because here's the other thing too. I'll give you a prime example. Mr. Allen that owns, Mr. Allen and what's his name that started Microsoft, Paul Allen, and the guy that owns the Clippers that started Microsoft, they both own sports teams too, okay? Now, I always tell people, do y'all really think that they came up with all the innovative stuff that Microsoft did by themselves? Nope. They had empowered employees that were innovative. That's why them guys are able to own sports teams and be cheering and acting crazy at sports games and stuff like that. That's why. Because they've empowered people to think like them and to come up with more innovative ways. Those people are highly paid, highly qualified themselves, but they also highly qualify, empower, and highly pay others to be innovative and come up with greater things than they did. So just think about that. So this can make or break an organization and lead to drastically bottom line production there. So here's an overview of what we're going to do today. What are behavioral issues we are seeing in our current work environment? So we're going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about the big ones. I'm going to talk about little things. So if you guys see on your infographic, you may see like, man, that's a long list of stuff on the front and back of that infographic there. But the thing about it is I'm going to tell y'all all the little small pebbles that you're going to step on. Have y'all guys ever been, floating or anything like that? And then you walk off, you get off and then you may be walking barefooted and all those little rocks that be hitting your feet and you're like, ow, 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 ow. You know what I'm saying? Like those little rocks. That's what I'm gonna talk about. Those little rocks that poke you in the feet. This is nothing big. This is not a. These are not big things, but they are little things that eventually adding up to cost your bottom line. Okay. What are the causes of those behavior issues within the workforce? And what is the impact? What's the impact of it? Then, what are practical solutions for you guys that can lead to a positive change? Y'all see, I'm real big with words. Okay, positive. Because as leaders, you guys can have negative influence too. How many of y'all know y'all can have negative influence? Okay, so positive change. And we're going to talk about that empowerment part. What action that you can facilitate to basically empower your people in overcoming. Because you gotta understand, it is your job as a leader. You've been called to be a leader. Your job is to help them facilitate how they can heal themselves. See, here's the thing. Here's the difference between telling somebody that, oh yeah, you got to get right, you got to get better so the company bottom line, but empowering them to do that, giving them the vision of how them getting better with their mental and emotional health will help them be a better family person, will help them be a better friend, will also help them be a better coworker, and to make more money. Because as we have old saying in sports, man, I gotta eat. You hear athletes talk about that all the time. Man, I gotta eat. I gotta eat. That's the same thing with the workplace. You know, you gotta eat. They gotta eat. So the bottom line is, hey, let's eat together. That's the bottom line. I'm gonna help you so that you can eat better. Because you're the reason why I can eat better. So here are issues we're seeing. And I'm gonna do about 4 to 5 at a time here. But number one, poor job performance. We all know that one. We all know poor job performance is not working well with others. Let me ask you guys this. How many of y'all are struggling with people not working well with others and not responding to coaching? Raise your hand. Okay? Now, we're going to talk about how to curtail that later. Okay? But think about that. When you are not responding well to coaching and not working well to others, that's going to cause a big, big problem in culture. How many of y'all know culture is important, right? Your culture is important. But to have a great culture, you got to have a great team. Everybody has to know their niche. Everybody has to know their role. You have to be able to get along. You can't have that petty thing going on. How many of y'all ever seen guys, people that are working together, they don't even speak to each other, but they have to talk to each other to do their job, and then you have this weird silence, awkwardness, where they, yeah, dog, yeah, yeah, you, and it's like, are y'all, like, what are y'all? Like, talk to each other, humanize each other. You don't have to like each other to get a job done. You don't have to necessarily be best friends to humanize the other person, because we're all human at the end of the day. We all got a job to do. We all have an end goal. Next, resistant to change and not owning up to action. These two kind of go hand in hand. Because most of the time when people are resistant to change, they're not going to own up to their actions either. Y'all ever notice that? People that don't like change, and then if you talk to them maybe about changing, they'll never own up to actually what they're doing. They'll find a way to try to reflect it on you. Now, we're going to talk about some stuff later on where you can ask those people questions to kind of flip the script on that. But I do want to cover what we're seeing here. Negative attitude, poor work ethic, arrogance, poor communication skills, and skills not lining up with the job. We all know about negative attitude, poor work ethic, and people being arrogant. A lot of time that has to do with, just people just like, hey, I have a fixed mindset. You got two different types of people with fixed mindsets and people with growth mindsets. Most arrogant people have a fixed mindset. That fixed mindset is saying, this is the way I've always done it. This is who I am. Everybody has to adjust to me. Everybody got to do it my way because I know the way, because I have the past experience. I have the college education. I'm the one that actually should be in charge and not you. Those are, I mean, how many of y'all have dealt with those type of people, those fixed mindsets? Those are fixed mindsets. And then they always got a story to tell about how, they did it 20 years ago, or how they did it 5 years ago, or what they learned in college. And it's like, okay, we get that. We understand that. But can you help me, do it this way? And then we could probably implement it, some of your tactics too. But don't be so resistant against the way that we've, maybe doing it, or the way that we're trying to do it. And then, like I said, skills not lining up to the job. And I'm going to tell you on this one here, and we're going to talk about this when we talk about solutions. You may have to make a decision to put somebody in another spot in a job in order to keep them. I saw this scenario. A friend of mine went and applied for a job within an institution they was at. And this manager that interviewed him said, hey, you had a great interview, but I don't feel like this job is the right job for you. And at first they were hurt. But then after they got another job and they realized like that person was right. The only reason why they applied for the job that they did apply for was because of the money. But that job did not fit their personality. I'll give you another example. It was a lady I worked with within a financial institution that was a manager at a financial institution, and she always tells the joke. Whenever we used to talk about personalities and different things like that. And she had a very thriving branch in Tulsa, Oklahoma, one of the top ones in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And she was the branch manager, and everybody was like, she was like, man, she was always stressed out all the time. And she was like, I got to change jobs. I got to do this. I got to do that. And people were like, you got the #1 branch in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Why are you wanting to change jobs? And she was smoking. She always said, Joe said, I was smoking 2 packs of Virginia Slims every day. I mean, every day. She was like, I was huffing and puffing, every single day. Then she ended up getting a job in the training department, and her life completely changed. She stopped smoking. She took in charge of her health again. And she said it was the best move that she ever made. Now, she was making a little less money, but she was happy. She was happy. Sometimes you have to sit down with people, and that's part of getting to know your employees too. That's some responsibility for you guys. We're going to talk about that too. You have to know if their skills are lining up with the job. And that's part of this whole COVID thing too. Oh, there we go. I had paused it for a second on the side there. Uh-oh, y'all. I know that first one. How many of y'all dealt with that first one before? Raise your hand. How many of y'all dealt with that first one? You had those people, like you can just be nice to them all day. But, yes, but. You could be like, you could catch them doing dirty stuff. You could catch them. And you could point it out. You have it on paperwork. Yes, but. Please just own up to it so we can move on. That's all you're hoping for. You're just like, just own up to it so we can move on. Those yes, but people, and some of y'all even got them in your family. Everything is a yes, but. Everything is a yes, but. Yes, but. And it's like, stress-induced actions. Lack of motivation and will to start or complete a task, anger, and here's another one. And a lot of time, you have to read between the lines here. Some people, this is the way that they deal with life, and they take stuff out on other people. And y'all probably heard the saying, sarcasm is okay, but a lot of time people use it to weaponize just being just being stinky. Y'all know those people that weaponize sarcasm. And then when you call them out on it, oh man, why are you taking this so serious? I'm just being sarcastic. And then you had to give them the like, you know what you're doing. But they use that as an excuse to basically be stinky. You know, or to shoot their little shot, to shoot their little jab at somebody. Me, myself, and I. Y'all remember that song? How many of y'all remember that song? Me, myself, and I. Oh, yeah, we got a couple. You know, you got these people that got that me, myself, and I mindset. That no matter what, it's all about me. How can I benefit? Now, that's okay to a certain extent. And you as a supervisor need to tell them how they can benefit. But the thing about it is that they have to understand with some balance that their actions affect the trajectories of other people. That's important. That when you're working among a team, anything, everybody's actions affect the trajectory of other people. If you do some crazy stuff to cause this business to go out of business, understand that you're taking food away from my table. You're taking food away from your coworker table, the one that you actually like. The one that you like, you hurting them too. You may not like this one over here, but you like that one right there. And your actions taking food away from their table. I can't give nobody a raise if we ain't bringing in no profits. So what are the causes of all these? So we talked about the issues here. Now we're going to talk about some causes. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Go back. Oh, here we go. Social economic standing. Did you guys know this affects people's mentality a lot? Because in the world of Instagram, in the world of Twitter, you know, people are always constantly showing off stuff. If you don't have the new Mustang or the new, you know, that's why you see a lot of young people, they want an $80,000 job coming right out of college. And you sit down and you talk to them and you're like, I can't, wait. Hey, what you asking for? What you want to get paid? Wait, hold on now. You're like, I ain't even making that much. Like, what in the haberdashers you got going on in your head? You know, and that's the thing with that. They look at that social economic standing, and everybody want what the Joneses got. You know, that's the old saying is that, you know, and you know, how many of y'all remember moving on up to the east side? Everybody want a piece of the pie where they can move to the east side. All right, and that's the thing. And so, guess what that leads to? Sometimes that leads to people with a chip on their shoulder, and they may just have an attitude because I'm like, I can't get what I want. So I'm going to cause problems at work, and I'm going to try to find me another job. Because if they ain't paying me, they ain't doing this like I want them to do. Blah, 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 blah. Right? Financial struggles. That also causes some of the issues. So, hypothetically speaking, how many of you guys, I done ran into 2 of them within a month. Here. Some people have a car accident. Their deductible is too much for them to pay. They ain't got that in the savings account. Deer just took their car out. They're struggling financially right now. The car that is total, they only getting $5,000 for it. Now, how many of you guys know you cannot buy a good car at $5,000? If you do, you're gonna spend another $5,000 in parts to get it operational. So now you have employees with that type of struggle going on. Guess what that's going to affect? They're going to come into work being grumpy because they had to get up 30 minutes early to catch a ride to come to work. Or they had to get up an hour early so they can catch a ride to come to work. Or they're upset that the person that they asked to help take them to work is complaining or fussing at them or making them feel like that they're the reason of their problem. So they come to work with that burden on them. Because how many, think about it, how many of y'all like to burden people with your problems? Right. Nobody in here like to tell everybody their problem and have everybody in their business and have everybody helping them. Nobody. Nobody. So your employees are going through the same thing. And then they come to work and then they try to act like, everything is fine to save face. But we're going to talk about how you can help them in that situation to communicate more and how you can help them and how they can, be empowered. And then mental health issues and cultural background. So like you said, well, why you say cultural background? Well, cultural background can also affect what a person does on their job because of different problems that they may face because of their cultural background. So understand that. They may be going through some stuff at home. Think about it like this, all right? And I'm going to give you a prime example of it. And I'm not going to go into, a race dynamic, but I'm going to go into a male-female dynamic in this. So you may have grown up in a family that might have been very male-dominated as a female. If you was a female growing up in a family that was very male-dominated, but you have a personality where you don't mind telling people off and you smart and you empower and you're not going to sit down and be just cooking and having babies, right? Because you want to work. You want to get out there and work. So, but your cultural background, your mom, your dad, everybody else is putting pressure on you to get married and have babies. And you're like, I don't want that. So guess what that probably drives you to be in work? That probably drives you to be to have a chip on your shoulder. You might go to the point where you might smart off at people whenever they show, like they say passive aggressive comments toward a woman, or they act like that you are not credible where you at. You might immediately, because your whole life you've been told that a woman has a certain place. You experience a little bit of that on the job, you're going to immediately cop an attitude. Somebody going to pay the price. Because like, I'm dealing with this at home. I ain't going to deal with it with you. Y'all see what I'm saying with that? Woo! 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 These first two. Man, the worst thing, and I can tell you this right now, spouses and relationship statuses. Boy, some of us have had to deal with it personally, and you know how it feels. Breakups, divorce. Somebody that you were seeing, you thought things were one way, and they thought it was another way. You come to work the next day after staying up all night arguing with somebody, or staying up all night tossing and turning in your bed crying at night because of a broken heart and a heavy heart. So you already know because of a lack of sleep, you're not going to be as alert at work. Customer comes up, reminds you of the person that you had an argument with last night. You might have to go to the bathroom and cry out some tears. But then again, you might cop an attitude with that person, and you might not even want to work with the person because they remind you of somebody that just hurt your heart last night. That happens in the workplace. That happens. You see it more than you think. And a lot of times we don't even know that it's happening because we don't know what's going on. Sometimes people hold that stuff in. Most of the time they hold it in. And also that's big too, because a lot of times people are ashamed of this. Like we talked about, EAP is going to be so important. They're ashamed to say they have a marriage problem, that they stayed up all night arguing with their spouse. They're ashamed to say, you know what, me and my spouse we've been at odds with each other. They're ashamed to say, this guy that I love hurt my heart. This woman that I love hurt my heart. That's huge. And then they come to work and those microaggressions come out. Or they may be in a relationship where they're being emotionally abused, where everything that they say get critiqued. Everything that they say, and then the only place that they can actually come out and those microaggressions come out is where? At work. Because at home, the other person, quote unquote, puts them in line. You feel me on that? Y'all see that? Family dynamics. Some people, same thing. They're struggling with, and I've seen this in the workplace where, Maybe somebody's struggling. I'm going to give you an example of one that I've seen. Somebody's struggling to have kids. And then they seeing kids in the workplace. And then it brings on emotions. Because, you know, what happened is they just lost a kid through a miscarriage. And then they're not even right the rest of the day, but they saw these cute little kids that came in the lobby, and that brought them and made them wish. They said, I want my little, you know what I'm saying? I wish I would have had my child. And then now they're dealing with that the rest of the day. Every child that they see, they're just like having an emotional moment because of that family dynamics that they desire. People are dealing with those type of things. Lack of self-awareness and emotional intelligence. That's a huge one right here. Sometimes people don't understand how their actions are perceived. One of the things I had to learn from the DISC assessment that I learned is about my personality. If y'all familiar, how many of y'all familiar with the DISC assessment? Okay, so I'm a very high I and a D, which means that I love people, I get adrenaline off people, I'm always talking, I'm always, yay. Give you another hint, my strength finders, my number one strength finder is positivity, and number 2 is woo, win others over. Number 3 is maximizer. Maximize, that's why I'm late for everything, because I maximize the time on everything. Y'all feel me on that? All right, I'm an includer. I like to include everybody. I'm the hype man. I want everybody to feel accepted and stuff like that, okay? So sometimes my personality can be overwhelming to some people. I've had to learn when people are a little standoffish with me, not to take that personal, because on the other end of the DISC assessment, you have people that are S and Cs. S and Cs are very observant people. It takes a while for them to trust you. And when you come with all this energy, they're looking at you like, hold up. What? I need to know why you got all this energy, number 1. Number 2, you don't know me like that. Number 3, I need some help understanding you. I need some help understanding your motives. What you trying to do? And so I have to be very emotionally intelligent and sometimes back off the hypeness and ask those people questions. Get them to start talking instead of me doing all the talking. Once I get them to start talking, then they say, oh yeah, he's a genuine guy. But that is EQ, emotional intelligence. And I had to learn it. And I didn't realize that. When getting tasks done, my D comes out a lot more because I'm like, all right, you do blah, 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 and I do da, 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 da. Now let's go. For some people, that is like, I don't like him. He's too aggressive. I had to learn to say, hey, what do you think about this situation right here before we get started? How should you think we should approach this? Because if you get feedback, you get a key word called buy what? Buy in. I want y'all to remember that. And you can probably write that down. If you get feedback, you get what? Say it loud and proud. Right. If you get feedback, you get buy-in. Every employee wants to feel like they're a part of the decision-making process, especially if they have to carry out the process. Does that make sense? If you have to carry out a process, you want to have a say-so in the process. So let's look at that EQ. A lot of your employees are lacking here, but it's your responsibility to help them. And sometimes that involves being vulnerable and allowing them to see you and telling them the mistakes you made and using yourself as an example to help correct their behavior. Chemical dependency. That's a big one. You got people addicted to painkillers. You got people addicted to certain, like to alcohol, to, as my old football coach used to say, marijuana, crystal meth, all of that stuff. EAP. That's going to be covered later, not during my presentation, but Jake is going to go in some detail, and Jake is going to help y'all out a lot in that. Okay? Lack of nutrition. People don't eat well, they don't think well. Seriously. If they're not getting the proper nutrition, how many of you guys have ever ate like a double cheeseburger for lunch with a bunch of fries and like a milkshake, and you went back to work and you wanted to go straight to sleep? Right? That happens. The only way that you could probably balance that double cheeseburger out is get a high caffeinated energy drink to kind of push yourself on through the rest of the day. Well, this happens to your employees right here. And then they come back and you wonder why they moody. But sometimes people don't know what's good for their body and what's not good for their body, especially when they're doing work. Lack of sleep. Talk about that lack of sleep. Somebody that's needing 6 and 7 hours of sleep, they only get 3 hours of sleep. That's going to make you cognitively irritable. How many of y'all get irritable without sleep? Okay, so you know, that's why I say it's important to ask your employees, pull them in the office and say, hey, you all right? You getting enough sleep? I mean, you good? Like whenever they cop an attitude and anything, just ask them, hey, explain to me what's going on. Explain to me how you feeling. Did you get enough sleep last night? You eating right? Different things like that. And then I'm pretty sure a lot of people are stressed out what's going on now. You know, the world, society, COVID, the election, all different types of things. You have to help people navigate their thoughts, their feelings, even if you don't agree with them. That's why you're in a place of leadership. And here's the other thing. You cannot force your thoughts and your ways on people. You have to help them navigate their own ways. So you collaborate instead of control people. You collaborate with them. And what I mean by collaborate is you find an understanding, even when you disagree. Some people are scared of certain things. And you may not be scared of them. You may not understand. You be like, how in the world? Like, don't be scared of it. Let's just go do it. You all right? Nah, that's not going to work because they still going to be scared of it. They still going to be nervous about it. So you have to put in and implement ways to help with that. And then you got those unconscious biases. So once again, with those unconscious biases, we also have biases against people that we might work with. Give you an example. Maybe it's a man that had a bad relationship with their mother. So a lot of time, if he had a bad relationship with his mom, sometimes he might be a little aggressive towards women. Y'all see what I'm saying with that? So he has an unconscious bias against strong women. And then it's like, so you have to be able to receive that, help him process that, and try to get to the root of it if that is the cause. So right here, lack of knowledge, wisdom, and education. Some people are ignorant because of stuff that they don't know. And ignorant is not a bad word. Ignorance is the lack of knowing. That's the definition of ignorance. The lack of knowing, the lack of understanding, the lack of education. I didn't know. I'll give you an example. I'm going to tell y'all a story about myself. And I'm going to admit something that I thought that I didn't suffer from. So, a few years ago, you know, I had just got my tattoo, and it was crazy. I just got a tattoo of my mom and my grandma and my dad's initial on my arm. Said to myself, a mama's boy, grew up around them strong. You know, my mom is a strong Mississippi woman. I tell people that she's the mixture of the Madea movies. You know, she's actually Madea, carry her gun around. Like, I will blow your head off if you get out of the way, you get out of line. But she also the sweet church lady, too. Baby, let me pray for you. She the mixture of both of them. So, you know what I'm saying? Phenomenal woman. Love her to death. And I thought that I never had biases against women. And I was dating this girl in Wisconsin, and I was at her place, and then I said years ago, and I was sitting on her couch, and I was like watching this woman commentator, and I'm sitting here like, man, I'm tired of these women commentators in football because it's like all these old football players out here why they don't, get all these old football players that know the game and da. Okay, like a gangster. Let me tell you what she did. She came over, I was sitting in the chair. She came and just sat in my lap, put her arm around me like this, and she said, Reggie, have you ever thought about you had a daughter that played football growing up with you, and you taught her everything about the game? You taught her, you know, she know all about your coaching stories. You taught her strategy, scheme, and when she got old enough where she couldn't play anymore, she decided that she was going to go into sports commentating and show off the knowledge that Daddy gave her. And every time she goes out on the field, she always feel connected to her daddy. How would you feel if a man looked at her as a piece of meat, or looked at her and said that her opinions and her analysis and objectify that and say that it's not important? Mwah. And right then and there, I was sitting in that chair, and it's like, have y'all remember Road Runner cartoon where the anvil just come and drop on Road Runner head? That's what happened to me and all my emotions. The anvil came dropping straight down because I knew I was wrong. Right then, my life changed because I realized something was in me that I didn't know. I thought I wasn't biased. I thought I wasn't sexist, but I was, because I didn't feel like women should be there. Now that has changed, and I have a whole different perspective because of that one situation. Now, I also could have argued with her and made all the doggone excuses in the world, but I didn't. Because what could I have said? What could I have said? So, fixed mindsets. I talked about that at fixed versus growth mindsets. You have two different mindsets. You can grow or you can stay fixed. Usually fixed people get left behind. Y'all feel me on that? You ever wonder why old football coaches like, and I'm going to give it an example of all my football fans, like Andy Reid. How many of y'all love Andy? Yeah, how many of y'all love Andy? Andy Reid, Bill Belichick, Nick Saban. You wonder why those three old men are able to be loved by so many different players over their years of coaching and why they win. You hear commentators always talking about how they've changed with the game. Y'all see what I'm saying with that? You hear commentators say they've changed with the game. They adjust to their players. You hear them say that all the time. You got to get out of that fixed mindset and change with the game. Y'all feel me? Confidence in certain life changes. So here's my little hypothesis here. So what would happen if you tried new approaches to assist employees? You may end up changing a life and your work environment. That what may end up happening there. Okay? So understand, you can change a life. You can change a life. Practical solutions for you. Number one, give up micromanaging. Exercise power with a person, not over a person. The reason why this one is important is because a lot of time we think just because we're in a management position, people should just automatically bow down and kiss the ring. It's not always the case. Exercise power with people. Every manager is also able, and those same coaches I mentioned, do you think Andy Reid get mad at? He probably does, but you know why Patrick Mahomes is able to be like jumping around, playing free, throwing the ball all side on and throw. If you know anything about football, a quarterback should never be rolling to the right side and throw the ball across his body like that. That will make a coach have a heart attack and will straight cuss you out and will get you benched. Andy Reid don't sweat that. He don't micromanage Patrick Mahomes. He let Patrick Mahomes be who? He let him be himself. He has the talent. I'm going to let him play. I'm just going to call the plays. Me and Eric B. Enemy, we gonna sit here with our little sheet right here and talk between each other and figure out what we're gonna tell him next. We just gonna let him play. But that's what you got to do sometimes. Strive for perfection and give up insisting on perfection. People are not perfect, y'all. They're not. A lot of times people will succumb if you put too much pressure on them. They'll actually end up underperforming. Strive for perfection, but don't insist on it. I had a coach, he would always say, for every negative, there's a positive. Use if they're not perfect and they don't get everything accomplished, use that as a way to help them grow. And then when you sit down and you talk to them, this is what you got to present it to them. You say, hey, explain to me about this situation. Explain to me about, from what you see right here, what happened. If you get them to start talking, most of the time they will tell you and end up coaching themselves. Because most of the time people know what they need to do to change things, but you got to get them to start talking things out, and they got to start hearing their own thoughts. Once you get them to talking, then you can just come in and say, okay, now this is what we're going to do to guide and facilitate this that way. All right. Let go of only providing negative feedback, which brings me to this one. Don't be the manager when everybody come around that people expect negativity, or every time they call you call somebody to the office, they're automatically scared. They automatically like, oh, the old expletive. That should not be the reaction of people when you come around. And then be what you expect. Stop expecting that people must do what you say because of your position. I said that earlier. Be what you expect. The best leaders are the one that demonstrate what to handle conflict good. They got to see you do what? Handle conflict. You got to demonstrate to them how to handle conflict, how to handle problems. When they see you do it, then that's the example for them. Provide EAP. Create an open door policy with high confidentiality standards. Have an open door policy, y'all, but make sure that whatever, and this is how you develop that relationship. That person your employee should be able to go in there and tell you that their spouse cheated on them and you're having a tough time right now. They should be able to do that. They should. You may say, well, I'm just the boss. I'm not a counselor. Well, that's why you got EAP. But it's your job to point them towards EAP. Y'all feel me on that? Because what you do as a supervisor, you actually traject people's whole entire lives. Please understand that. You traject what they become. Not only at the job that they're working at, because like Deborah said earlier, people spend a third of their life at their job. That means they spend a third of their life with you. True leaders have an impact for a lifetime. True leaders create other heroes. Give you an example. How many of y'all know Colin Powell and General Mattis? Okay? Them guys have a tree of leaders. Nobody in the military speaks negative about them. They always talk about the men, how this high standing character, the standard, how they hold everybody accountable, but also how they hold themselves accountable. Those are some great men. The reason why I bring those two guys up, my brother was cybersecurity and IT intelligence in the Army for 26 years. He just retired not too long ago, and he's worked with both of them. And he has nothing but great things to say about both, and he loves both of them. And I know that from firsthand experience because of the stuff he said about him. But everybody in the military feels the exact same way. And it's crazy that that happens. And they can also feel like they can go to those guys and talk to them about what they're dealing with. And my brother, he was the same way. He had people under him, and he made that open door policy. That's why I love talking to military guys, because military guys are really good at leadership. My brother, he would tell me, he said he would always have that open door with his guys. He's like, tell me what's going on so I can put things in place. He said, because at the end of the day, we got to get a job done. And he was in a very high pressure job being, y'all understand, cybersecurity and IT in the military. So my brother did stuff like if they traveled, dignitaries traveled, he made sure that they had like multiple phones, phones that couldn't be decoded, stuff that they could put on walls and stuff that with the echo that they had all those tools with them. If they lost one, they could get another one. This person was in place at this area if this happens and all that type of stuff. His group was in charge of that. So crazy, right? So think about if you mess up one time with that. Somebody get killed or some information get leaked out. You in trouble. Big trouble. So give your employees personality assessment, EQ assessment, communication assessments, and reveal theirs with you. That is very important. You say, well, that's a waste of money. No, it's not. Because if I know how to communicate with you, if I know your strengths, if I know your personality, I can put you in the best place to do what? To thrive, to succeed. You can put them in the best, like those other coaches we're talking about. If you look at over the years, to give an example like Nick Saban, I hate to use his name again, but if you know anything about Alabama used to be a running football team where they went 3 yards in a cloud of dust, always getting the ball to the running back. Now, they're averaging 500 yards a game passing the ball. I'm pretty sure that probably how Nick Saban, when he first started doing that, he probably was shaking in his boots because that was something that he wasn't used to. But sometimes you have to get to know your personnel to put them in a place where they can succeed. He had good quarterbacks. And so it was like, well, we might well let them pass the ball if they're here. So based on who you have, use those people. Put them in the right spot. All right, come up with work structure for salary and hourly employees. This is a huge one, y'all. How many of y'all, with everything that's going on with the schools, you got parents now that are struggling? How many of y'all have that? They're struggling because it's like, how do I keep my kid if they're only going to school a couple days a week? Or if my kid is on COVID protocol after they've been exposed to COVID? What am I supposed to do? My kid is 6 years old. They can't stay at home by themselves. So guess what has to happen? You have to be creative. You may have to say, okay, well, take this week off. We may pay you half vacation this week, and then you can work another week if you can. The next week when they go back to school, we might work 60 hours a week or whatever like that to help you compensate the money you lost. You may have to come up with creative structures like that. Hourly employees, if you got not hourly, but salary employees, you may have to give them the permission to not be online during the day, especially if they're not customer service people. And just ask them you may have to judge them according to task and quality of work instead of the quantity of hours they spent at a computer or at an office. Y'all get what I'm saying with that? The way you look at work has to change. A lot of times we look at work at how many hours a person spent at a desk, and I've seen it for myself. They might spend, if they work in 8 hours, they might spend 4 hours just surfing online at whatever. And then they might spend the other 2 hours walking around talking to other employees. But you think that they're doing a lot of work. Y'all feel me on that? So I've seen that. So you may have to get very creative in how you allow them to do their jobs. You have to. And then reinvent continually. Be creative in compensation. Make sure it's HR compliant and rewarding people. I had a boss. She was phenomenal. And I had a boss. He was phenomenal. Like all my bosses have been phenomenal. I think I've only had one bad boss, and I've learned so much from them. Like it could be a surprise day off, paid day off. It could be bringing a person a work anniversary a thing of sticky notes and their favorite candy bar or a pen or anything like that. People love that stuff. It might be getting a new Keurig if you got a bunch of coffee drinkers and you buy this nice fancy Keurig for the office. Well, you'll see them eyes walk up. Oh man, we got new coffee maker. Oh yeah. We moving on up in the world. I'm telling you, I'm telling you, small things like that has a huge difference in culture within a company. I'm serious. You may have this idea and you say, oh, man, it's not really gonna work. You'll be surprised. That might totally change a person's morale. Create business integrative groups that tie similar people together. And this may say, okay, so if you got a bunch of veterans that work in different departments of your thing, create a business innovative group among like Microsoft Teams or something like that veterans can talk to each other. Maybe they can do events with each other. That raises morale. That helps them because veterans deal with things that most of us don't deal with. Give an example about my brother, and I can confess this because my brother, but for the longest, until he, increased his counseling, and he was he had to do some crazy stuff, but he talked about it. But like one of the hardest things he said he had to do was go identifying some of his men bodies after eating breakfast with them that morning, picking up their bodies and calling their families. His wife, he's retired now. His wife said he would cry and sweat in his sleep. And he'd be moaning and crying in his sleep, and it would wake her up. He didn't cry then, but look, he's crying now. You see what I'm saying? Y'all see what I'm saying? You have some employees that had to deal with something like that before. They need a group where they can have those conversations with. You see what I'm saying now? So create those business innovative groups. Maybe a women's group. Maybe an LGBTQIA group. Maybe a veterans group. Maybe a Latino group. Maybe a mosaic group where you have all people of color. That's okay. Create those groups and allow them to be able to, and if you even present that ideal to some of your employees, you don't even have to run it. They'll run it. They'll take charge of it, and it will increase the morale. Put diverse teams together on projects. Make sure on projects to create innovative projects and to help with the psychology of the mindset and put people together that are different so that they can get to know each other and develop relationships with each other. Okay? Right here, provide life skill and resources and financial education is a part of their payday. All right, so it's your responsibility to point them to the EAP programs that help them financially. Financial planning. Have days where somebody comes in and teach them about budgeting, teach them about financial planning, teach them about how to live on a limited budget. Get somebody in because that's going to help because a lot of times people say, well, I ain't getting paid enough to do this. I need a pay raise. Well, if you show them how to use what they got, a lot of time that talk may calm down. A lot of times people just don't know how to use what they got. You can teach them that. And there you go. Create an overall plan and develop. When you guys have check-ins and stuff, let the person know their big, the big growth plan for them personally. Does that make sense? Like how you want to grow them. Not just in the job, but as an entire person. When you have those check-ins and stuff and they see, man, I want to grow. Wow. They want to help me grow as a person. And then they like, I'm going to work harder for this person. And then right here, non-work related conversations. I never forget, working with Arvis, they had some great bank presidents. And all those bank presidents will always come on the teleline when I used to be there and talk to us. Now, I'm gonna give him a call, a guy out in here. It used to be my boss too at a movie theater. And yeah, Mr. Randy back there, he would come in and just have conversation with us, talk to us about whatever we was talking about back there. He would serve popcorn with us. He would just have a regular conversation, non-work related conversation. I felt like I was a part of this man's family because we talked about non-work related things, even though he was my supervisor's supervisor. I still had that respect for him as being the big man, but we had a relationship. He see me out on the street, I see his kids, we have a conversation. We talk about everything. Love that dude. But that's an example of how I worked hard for him because I knew his expectations, but I also knew him personally. Y'all feel me on that? Then these last few here. Learn to develop, coach, support, and delegate. Situational leadership. Please look that up. Ken Blanchard, write that down. Ken Blanchard, situational leadership. Please look that up. Ken Blanchard, situational leadership. Learn when to develop someone, learn when to coach someone, learn to support, and learn to delegate. Value results and relationships. Communicate with logic, using your vision and mission statement as a filter. This one is huge right here because when you communicate with those people that are going through those problems, when they're going through problems, you got to always remember to let them know what they signed up for. Here's the mission statement. Our mission statement is to provide great service to everybody in the United States. Is your actions providing great service to everybody in the United States? When you ask a person that and it's like, no, it don't. And then it's like, okay, what can I do to help change that? And then y'all saw what I did right there? As a leader, I said, what can I do to help change that? Empathize, but don't be controlled by your emotions. Bring the energy you expect them to have. If you don't want to, here's the thing. People get emotional and they come to work emotional. But you can't bring that same energy. They cop an attitude with you. You can't cop no attitude back because you the boss. Because when you do, guess what that's going to do? We got attitude. We're going to see who can get the most attitude throughout the day. And then the last one here, we're going to talk about a few of these here. And this is what you're going to facilitate, and then we'll be done here. But EAP, don't take so many things. We got to teach our employees to do these things. So this is what we got to teach our employees to do. And like I said, use the EAP as resources. Get them not to take things personal. Once again, the best way to do that is by you not taking things personal, right? People model what they see. Yeah, people model what they see. Take ownership of happy accidents caused by behavioral issues. If a person struggles with chemical dependencies, we need to help them say, hey, it's a happy little accident. You got a little too drunk last night. You're at work today. We understand that. We want you to go back home, sober up. You're not going to get paid, but you're not fired. Get them to take ownership of that. And it's like, just go back home. You won't get paid today. It's a happy little accident, and we're going to talk about this tomorrow. Not right now. Exercise, eat right, and sleep. And then talk to people and get help with the issues. That's the EAP. Go get counseling. Talk to their pastor, whatever they need to do. But you need to get them to start talking. And then also, too, get them to act on important stuff and not sweat the small stuff. Get them to schedule big things and eliminate distractions. So get them to eliminate distractions out of their life. You may have to have that tough conversation where you tell them that, hey, you probably need to let something go. There we go. Eliminate excess, practice self-control and self-mastery. And the best way to help them do that is giving them resources like a book like Emotional Intelligence. Any kind of books and resources that you use, podcasts, different things like that, because everybody do the podcast thing now. So give them podcasts, give them people that help them grow as far as this. Self-control and self-mastery. Teach them to rule their technology and don't let it rule them. You may have to come up with policies that say, okay, you can check your phone at this point in time, but make sure you teach them how to schedule when to check their phone, not checking it every time it beep, 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 beep. I tell people this all the time. I check my emails at certain points during the day. I don't check an email at an alert. I just don't. Because now I'm constantly controlled by email and text messages all together. So teach them that. Be extraordinary, but not for social media only. Empower your people to be extraordinary, not for they can just post on social media. Have them be extraordinary in every aspect of life. Coach them up on doing that. Coach them up on doing their jobs better. Encourage your people to evolve over time, to get a planner, to create different habits, different lifestyles. Connect with other people, volunteer, and motivate and encourage others, and do the same for yourself. So if we can get our employees to own this, volunteer is very important. People are a lot happier when they volunteer. Have y'all ever noticed that? Whether it's at the Humane Society, if they love animals and hate people. How many of y'all know people that hate people and love animals? Tell them to go volunteer at the Humane Society. They get to cuddle up with all the animals they want to. And then here, change perspectives. Get them to look at opportunities. Coaching is not bad. Whenever they get coached, let them know it's just an opportunity to get better. And stop fearing or blowing things up. We got to get them to not walk in fear and to do high quality of work. So these are all and weekly goal setting. Have your employees set weekly goals, personal and non-personal. And then you check in on them. I like that. Like if you send an email out and say, hey, give me one weekly goal you got, personal and non-personal. Watch what I tell you. Your employees will step up to those goals because they wrote them down and they sent them to you. If they respect you, they're going to step up to them. And then set plans to solve problems. So here we go. We're going to summarize this in this little video here. But learn and develop a program that realizes learning is a process. So this is how you're going to do this for those employee solutions. Online, social, and coaching. And then social learning, peer-to-peer. Delegate people, outside activities, outside assistance, EAP, social media. People love things on social media, so you might need to create resources and put them on social media. Did you know that people will actually look at your social media resources that work within your company instead of looking at it on email? Have y'all noticed that? You can put the same thing to them in an email and put it on social media, and I dare you to try that experiment. They'll look at it on social media first before they look at it on the email. Build milestones to motivate and diverse milestones there. And then what is your action plan? And so this is the thing with that. What is your action plan here? Write down ideas and sit with other supervisors and or HR to see if they can be implemented. So that is I want you to have an action plan after this. So I want you guys to be able to do that. And then I want to thank you. And then I want to cue up that video real quick so that you can see those three little things there. And then I will be done. But I want to play that video real quick. And then here's how to contact me here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead on and wrap it up. And then when we go into break, what will end up happening is we'll show that video after. But it's a nice little cartoon that kind of talks about, goes into detail, like how to implement those things as far as for the employees and for yourself. Okay, so we're gonna get ready to get ready to end this presentation here, like I said here with the action plan, and then right here, here's my contact information. So you can take a picture of that or, write it down. Please feel free to email me if you guys got any questions or you want any additional resources or anything like that. Just let me know and I'll be able to get that stuff to you. If I don't know, I'm gonna point you in the right direction and say, hey, go check over here. And then like Harris Multifaceted on Facebook, and I'm Reggie Harris on LinkedIn, and there's the phone number there. So I want to thank you guys. You guys have been phenomenal today, and I just want to thank you guys for coming here today and being a part of this great organization and being here willing to learn. So I know it was a lot of information. Take that infographic with you that I had. It's a front and back infographic summarization of everything that I went over. Plus, you may have your notes that you've been taking too. So I just want to say thank you. And I love you, and it ain't nothing that you can do about it.
Reggie Harris, everybody. Thank you, Reggie. Let's take a 15-minute break.
Oh, man. As I'm walking up here, I'm just thankful, kind of overwhelmed a little bit with thankfulness, just because, as we think about just everything that we've been through this year, as I'm sitting back there and I'm looking around the room, I'm just thankful for the people that I've had relationships with over the last several years. Very thankful for Connell Insurance and everybody within Connell. You guys have been a great partner to Summit Safety Group and myself over the last several years. So I really, really appreciate that. I'm going to let you into my world just a little bit. Okay. I'm going to start this off. How many of you enjoy speaking? Yes. I knew. Yeah. I'm also thankful for guys like Reggie who bring it every single time. His positivity, his love for life, his love for people. Man, we need more guys like you. We had the opportunity to get together last week and have lunch and just kind of share our vision for what we wanted for this conference. Let's be honest. We fully understand the week that we're in. Too much? Is that good? Good? Okay. We fully understand the week that we're in. We understand the year that we're in. And so we wanted to get together and kind of make sure, just at a basic level, make sure that our presentations were aligned and that we were bringing you guys stuff that was going to be pertinent. So kind of bringing you into my world just a little bit, I want to read you a text from my youngest daughter, who knows that even though how many times I speak, it's still something that I get extremely anxious about. One of the thing that I think brings us all together in a conference like this is the realization that we are all broken. We all have issues. We all have things that we need help with. We all have things that we wish we could do better. And so as I was talking to my kids yesterday, she sends me a text and says, "Dad, just picture all those peeps naked or see them as horses tomorrow when you're speaking," which I have no idea what that means. But man, I just so appreciate my kids. I appreciate her. She's 10, by the way. She's my youngest. We have my wife and I have 6 kids together. And so needless to say, we are extremely busy, but we are extremely thankful for them. And actually one of them is calling on my phone right now. So, but I just want to start this out with, as I think through 2020 and I think about all the things that we could talk about related to mental health, my goal for us today is really just to walk away with some hope. I really want everybody here to walk away with some just good basic principles about what to do in your workplace, what to do with your friends, your families, your coworkers, and more than anything, I just want you guys to feel that it's okay to know that we need help. And mental illness is extremely difficult. So as I think about what to say and how to get 2020 all wrapped up together, it's extremely difficult. So what I did is I actually wrote something out that I just want to read to you that I think does a pretty decent job of kind of pulling it all together. From month 1 of 2020, we were all reminded of how precious life is as Kobe Bryant his daughter, and seven other individuals and families lost their loved ones forever. With Kobe in particular, we not only mourned the loss of an iconic figure that the world followed since the young age of 18, the world was forced to look in the mirror, all of us, and evaluate how great we wanted to be and at what cost we were willing to achieve that perceived greatness. While many of us mourn the loss of someone who exemplified true mastery and dedication to their craft, what some of us mourned was the actual cost of that greatness he chose to pursue for so many years. Thankfully, we got a tiny glimpse into the hard work he was dedicating to his family and to fatherhood, but sadly saw it drastically cut short. So we looked at our friends, our families, our loved ones, and we hoped for more time. Many of us held our loved ones closer and pledged to slow down. Sports analysts, news anchors, celebrities, and social media influencers were publicly expressing their addiction to work and to staying busy, but making vows to slow down and focus on the things that matter most, to find balance and find time. Fast forward just 2 short months, and little did we all know, this time and intention we were all craving was literally being handed to us by a worldwide pandemic. Though we can all think of truly tragic circumstances related to COVID-19, the shutdown of businesses, and the mental and emotional struggles with isolation while in quarantine, we have to realize that part, not all, but part of our mental health depends on our ability to find positive perspective and a healthy outlook on life and the circumstances before us. We can't fully appreciate a sunny day without a long run of dreary ones. We can't appreciate quenching our thirst with a cold glass of water without being thirsty. We can't fully appreciate relaxation without some stress and hard work. We can't fully appreciate time until we all realize time is limited. So knowing these things to be true, before I dive into the challenging elements of mental health and one of the biggest health crises our culture is facing, suicide, it's important we pause and both reflect on and appreciate some healthy perspective that we've gained through the adversity we face. So that's really the heart of the message today. I want to find ways that we can turn adversity into positivity. And I want to start with that. I want to start with the realization that there are some really good positive things that we were able to get out of 2020. And so let's be reminded of those things. The first thing was time. We wanted it. We asked for it. We got time. Some of you maybe a little bit too much time, but it caused us to slow down and appreciate the time that we had. When people are laying on their deathbed, what's the thing that they want? When people are diagnosed with cancer, terminal cancer, what's the thing that they want? It's time. You cannot put a value on getting time. And that's what we were able to get because of the coronavirus. Family. Many of us were able to stop, slow down, spend more time with family. I know for us, sometimes it was a little too much, with kids being home and doing all their classes and everything through Zoom. It's very difficult at times, but at the same time, I was constantly appreciative of the time that we were able to spend with family and the focus that we were able to put on family. We were forced to look at our work-life balance. Just like I said in the beginning, we talked about all those people that were just proclaiming what they were going to change throughout 2020. Slowing down, realizing that through Kobe Bryant's example, that there needed to be more time that we focused on other things besides work. And so we were able to look at our work-life balance and try to make adjustments. Slow down. I am extremely driven in my job. I'm extremely driven in many elements of my life. And so to have something to collectively, as a whole, bring us all down together, that's a huge blessing. It's one thing for us to be able to do it by ourselves. It can be very difficult, but when everybody is collectively doing it together, it allows us the opportunity to slow down and be okay with that and appreciate that. Refocus. All the peripheral stuff that's on the outside, all the stress and the chaos, it allowed us to really hone in on the things that we wanted to focus on and refocus our lives, refocus our minds, our goals, our aspirations for our lives. In business, I know for us personally, we had to pivot. There were some things that we had to do to change our business model a little bit, but things that I'm grateful for. It's helped us to think outside the box. It's helped us to think about things, ways that we could do things differently, ways that we could reach out to our clients in a different way. And so we're very thankful for that. Downsize. How many of you guys had the opportunity to downsize your office buildings? We've had a lot of people who have engineering firms that we work with who basically have had these huge offices that realize we don't need all this space anymore. We can cut down on some of the expenses, and we can start to look at ways to continue to work from home and continue to try to encourage that work-life balance. So that's been a huge blessing. And man, just an appreciation for where we live. I mean, I've got a couple buddies that live up north in Minnesota, and they just sent me a couple texts just recently. Actually, it was not that recent ago. It was about a month ago, and they're already just pounded with snow. Some of you guys may love that. I'm not huge fan of that, but just the appreciation. I mean, think about all the people that were going through quarantine in these larger cities. I kept thinking about New York City and these people that are in these places that were not meant to live consistently. They're meant to sleep in, not live. And we get to walk outside and just enjoy the areas around us. So very much an appreciation for that as well. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but I think we also gained an understanding for flexibility and to have grace with people. I know we've worked from home. We moved all of our stuff out of the offices probably about 4 years ago. And so it's always been a stress for me to have kids coming in and things like that. But I think as we've all gone through this together, we can think about just the appreciation we have for everybody to be in the same spot and not be so stressed about those little things. You know, kids coming in and ruining our presentation or whatever it may be. If you guys remember this was a BBC deal where he was live on the air and his kids ran in and his wife ran in to grab him, and it was pretty funny. So as we go through this, I want to talk about the stats. But before I do that, I think it's extremely important that as we talk about stats, especially as it's related to things like suicide, that we don't just think about the numbers. Because what do numbers do when we think about humans? It dehumanizes them. It literally just puts them in a category where we think about just this huge population of people, but we don't really fully understand the stories behind that. And so as we start to drill down a little bit more just to our community, to the United States, and we start to see some of the faces of those that have just struggled so much with their own brokenness and so much with their own burden that they just couldn't take it anymore. So as we start to get into those statistics, I want to play a quick video, and we'll have to pause here just for a second. But I have played this video numerous times, and it doesn't matter how many times I see it. Are you guys gonna be able to play it? Is Dave coming? No, we separated it because of the issue that Reggie had. Yeah, I'm sure where Dave's at. But anyway, as we go through this, yeah, it's just an important. I think it does a fantastic job of really showcasing what it is at a human level, at a personal level, with those that are struggling with suicidal thoughts, struggling with the constant burden of depression and anxiety. And there's no question that there are people in this room that are dealing with the exact same thing. And so my hope for you is that as we go through this presentation, as we talk about some of the practical things, that it's not just you thinking about what other people need, but it's you yourself thinking about what you can get help with within your workplace and within those that, yeah, it's good to go. Yep. It's not coming in. It's not getting any bigger. Sorry, guys. Yeah, that's okay. All right, we'll just try one more thing. I mean, it's if it doesn't work, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, guys, I'll go ahead and just kind of tell a story real quick while we're waiting on that. I'm going to tell you just briefly. You know, how many of you in here have dealt with suicide before? Anything related to suicide? Yeah, several people. The amount of just sadness and brokenness that goes along with that is incredible. You guys who have been through that understand. My first experience with suicide, my dad was working for, my dad owned a company, a large construction company out in Washington, D.C., where we're from. And one of his best foremen, who was just one of those guys who was a go-getter, extremely hard worker, who was close to our family. All the foremen were close to our family. They would come over, we'd have dinners together, things like that. And his name was Brian. And he was one of those guys that his identity was pretty heavily invested in the fact that he was an iron worker. He was a guy that was going to go get stuff done. He was the guy that my dad would always put on the biggest projects. We're talking big high rises, bridges, things like that. Brian, one day was at work, made one simple mistake, stepped off side of a platform. A rebar dowel went right through his groin and through his hip. And it was so bad that it was debilitating to the point where he could hardly walk anymore. This is back in the late 80s, so there really wasn't as much of the medical help and technology that we have today. But what we saw happen with him is very typical. As he lost that identity, he lost that connection to what it was that he was doing every day. He just started to slip into a depression. The things that he used to cope with his day-to-day anxiety continue to get worse. You guys know what those things are: drugs, alcohol. I think if many of us in here are honest with ourselves, we would probably say that through 2020, maybe some of our consumption of those things has gone up a little bit. And so just check yourself. But as things like that happen, as something severe happens in your life, something traumatic, those things are kind of just waiting there to be taken advantage of even more so. And so that's exactly what happened with Brian. As he started to do drugs and alcohol at a high level. My dad tried to get him help. He wouldn't accept help. And long story short, he ended up killing himself. And it was extremely difficult for our family and for my dad, who had tried to invest so much time and energy into him. I can flash forward to high school. My uncle, who was in prison for almost 15 years, had just gotten out, came to live pretty close to us. We get a call from his girlfriend at the time that he had tried to kill himself by an overdose. We didn't live far away, so we went over quickly to the house. You know, he's laying there on the couch. We think he's dead. Call the ambulance, go through the whole process, and see what they do. They take him to the hospital, pump his stomach. Thankfully, he was okay. But all those things are extremely heavy on a family. You know, it's extremely difficult. But it's also we can't look at those individuals as victims. We have to look at them as people that need help, and we have to find a way to try to make those connections so that we don't see them as a burden in and of themselves, but that we find ways to get them help and resources. And sometimes that means that and a lot of times, the reason why this is so important about what we're talking about is that family struggles to help those that are closest to them when it comes to mental illness because of all the variables and all the things that are tied to those relationships. So the workplace becomes a fantastic opportunity and a fantastic place for you guys to be able to help somebody else's family member, because you don't have all those variables, you don't have all those attachments that are there. So are we a no on the video? No go. Okay. All right. So just to quickly, it's a fantastic video. If you Google or YouTube choose to stay, if you're ever dealing with somebody who is contemplating suicide, is talking about being extremely depressed, I think it's a great video to send to them. I think it's very uplifting, it's very hopeful, but it also talks and does a very good job of just kind of expressing what people that are dealing with these thoughts experience and how to help them through that. So we'll skip over that, but I want to get into the stats. These are the worldwide stats. So suicide is the second leading cause of death among 15 to 29-year-olds. Over 800,000 people die by suicide. That means that one death occurs every 40 seconds throughout the world. Pesticides, hanging, and firearms are the most common methods used globally. Pesticides being used in usually low-income countries. It's very accessible and it's easy for them to get. And man, that just breaks my heart thinking about somebody doing that to themselves and going through that poisoning because they just can't do it anymore. When we bring it down to a national level, if we look, suicide was the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. On average, 132 Americans died by suicide each day. 1.4 million Americans attempted suicide, and 90% of those who died by suicide had a diagnosable mental health condition at the time of their death. There's a lot of other things that go into financial things and things like that. Deborah pointed those out, and those things are absolutely true. I just have a hard time talking about some of those financial implications when we're talking about human life and we're talking about just the number of lives lost. When we think about Missouri, Missouri is number 10 out of all states in the United States for suicide. It is the second leading cause of death for ages 10 to 34. It's unimaginable to think about kids that are that young that are already dealing with thoughts of suicide and depression and anxiety to a point that they just don't want to go on anymore. On average, one person dies by suicide every 7 hours in this state. That's just a huge number of people. And again, as we talk about these stats, you got to think about the individual cases of those that are dealing with it and the families that are left behind. During the COVID era, before this one right here is adults with depression symptoms. Those that said none was high. During COVID, that dropped. Not a good sign. Those that were dealing with mild depression symptoms during COVID, in the blue here, goes up. Moderately goes up. Moderately severe. All of them have gone up across the board. And I think we can understand why. Just like Reggie alluded to, we've had a crazy amount of stuff going on this year between the elections, between the riots and all the protests and everything that's been going on. It's just been extremely stressful. And so those levels of depression and anxiety continue to go up more and more. So the core of our business at Summit Safety Group is OSHA compliance. We focus on safety and health. Safety is one of those things that obviously we spend a lot of time going through. The health component, on the other hand, is not something that a lot of companies are willing to invest in. And so I want to take you through, just from an OSHA perspective, because that is the core of what we do. It's what we deal with every day. And I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with this, but OSHA's focus for what it is it's an emphasis for these four things. These are the things that take the most number of lives when it comes to construction. You've got falls, struck by, electrocutions, and caught between. They account for 600 lives lost each year. We spend thousands and thousands of dollars, millions of dollars on safety programs to ensure that these lives are not lost, and that's a great thing. But I do want to kind of bring some perspective as we talk about the number of suicides that take place compared to this number. And the fact that very little of us are doing much about it and are not openly talking enough about it to make sure that people are getting the help that they need. The CDC states that 20% of all men who died from suicide were in construction or extraction. Basically, within the blue-collar trades, we're starting to see a huge number of suicides go up. We can talk about the details of that here in just a bit. For every 3 workplace fatalities that will occur in construction today, 10 to 12 workers will commit suicide today. That's a pretty drastic difference. How many of you are openly engaging in this process at your place? If you're an HR manager, if you're a manager at all, how many of you are going after this to make sure that this isn't happening at your place? Good, and that's great because it's needed. I would say that the majority of people don't, and a lot of it is a fear of just having these conversations. A lot of it is not knowing the tools to be able to have an open dialogue about this within your workplace. And so hopefully after the end of this, we're going to go through some very basic things that should open the door for that and give you guys some confidence to be able to have those conversations. 41,173 people died by suicide in 2017, and 24,000 of those were men ages 20 to 64. 20% of those men were in construction. That means that over 5 men working in the industry died by suicide. About 9 times more than the fatal 4 deaths combined that we just talked about. Some more recent CDC suicide stats in men. Recent study shows that construction and industrial workers are at a higher risk for suicide than many other occupational groups. They believe this can be partly explained by much of the current prejudice associated with mental health conditions. How many of you would say that that's a reality? Absolutely. Anybody who, like, I mean, just saying, for me to sit up here and say that I've got severe anxiety about speaking, it gets like, everybody's kind of gets a little bit awkward, right? I remember back October 6th, I was like, all right, I got 1 month. I got 1 month to go and I got to do this. And I do it all, I speak all the time, but I still get super anxious about it. What I'm saying is that we have to get to a place where we're all able to let our insecurities be seen, that it's okay, that we all have these things within us that need help. The more we can do that, the more we can accept the fact that there are elements of us that are broken. What does that do? It allows us to have a grace and a humility, right? There's a humility within that when you admit that there's something that you need work on and that you're not great at. But it also allows you to stop seeing just the brokenness within yourself, and you start to see the things in other people, and you start to have grace for them. You start to have a humility for them. And so I challenge you guys to just allow yourselves to go through that process, especially in today's climate. We need that. We need grace. We need a lot of grace. And I hope that you guys will accept that challenge. So we think about the prejudice associated with mental health conditions, and it is it's gotten better. But I'll tell you, one of the biggest prejudices is this sense of weakness. As we've had earlier generations, Deborah did a great job of bringing this up. As we have the younger generations coming up, they are more free to talk about this. The older generations see that as what? Weakness. So what does that do for them? Those that people that look up to those supervisors, that look up to those managers, that see them openly talking about people who are more open with their feelings. They're more open about talking about their issues. And they're hearing them say that that's weakness. Or if not even just using the word weakness, they're looking at them as though they're less than. That's creating a culture that does not allow for the things that need to be talked about. For men, construction and extraction jobs such as carpenters, electricians, and miners was number 1, again, because of the prejudice. Number 2 is in arts, design, entertainment, sports, and media, which typically includes jobs such as illustrators, tattooists, and professional athletes. And third on that list was installation, maintenance, and repair that consists of jobs such as mechanics, cable installers, and commercial divers. Now, of course, this is not taking into consideration veterans and the things that they deal with. I've got a good buddy of mine who spent 9 years, just recently got out as a Navy SEAL. He was stationed in Hawaii in a special dive unit. Did some crazy stuff that he can't share, can't talk about. I've got another buddy that's a Navy SEAL, has been in for 20 years. Both of them have, in the last couple of years, gone to funerals of their teammates, other Navy SEALs, who have killed themselves. These are guys that we look to have an unshakable mindset. These are guys that our culture worships, rightfully so in many ways. It's amazing what these guys are able to accomplish. But so many of them are starting to fall to the same thing. And why is it? They have such a hard time acknowledging. Both my buddies said, we had no idea. They never talked about it. They didn't want us to know. Had they been willing to share some of those things and share what they consider to be weakness, when in reality it's just human. It's just us being us, right? So if they would have been willing to share those things, who knows what would have happened. And our hope is that in cases where we do see people share, that those things unlock. One of the things that the video talks about is bringing all things hidden into the light. That's a powerful statement. When you think about all things that are hidden and you're just stuck with and you're burdened by, and it just driving you crazy because you're trying to deal with it yourself. You're not meant to deal with all those things yourself. We're meant to be in community with others. We're meant to be in relationship with others. And so as soon as you bring those things from the darkness into the light, it allows there to be a freedom within you that you can start to get those things, get some healing and get some things managed. Real quick, just suicide stats in women. Though men have a much higher rate of suicide, women are certainly not excluded. And that is an important point, that men are disproportionately higher in the statistics when it comes to suicide. So I just need you to think about that. With the ones that we're probably less likely to approach, that's who needs it the most. But back to women, the number one occupational category for suicide among women in arts, design, entertainment, sports, and media, which, as we discussed, include illustrators, animators, tattooists. The number two is jobs such as police officers, private investigators, and TSA workers. Number three are those in healthcare support, which include jobs such as dental assistants, massage therapists, and pharmacy aides. So as we get into the details now of what you're going to be able to do at your workplace, there's a group called Be the One. And if you just search it, Be the One, this is what I'm taking the information from. The reason why I'm taking the information from this is because I want every single one of you, when you leave this place, to feel comfortable being able to just basically walk through these things within your organization or with people that you're managing or people that you're just working with day to day. What they use this term called workplace gatekeepers, and it means that you're willing to be a gatekeeper for those individuals that are struggling, to lead them down this path towards resources that they need so that they can get the help that they need. The CDC statements on workplace prevention. This is a great statement, and it's very true. Better understanding of how suicides are distributed by occupational group might help inform prevention programs and policies, because many adults, listen to this because it's so true, many adults spend a substantial amount of their time at work. The workplace is an important but underutilized location for suicide prevention. I think one of the other things that I think back to when I think about 2020 and the things that we've learned, it's kind of helped to tear down this veil that's been between work and personal life. We've been forced to figure out a way to make both of those work, whether it's like Reggie said, where you've got kids that are at home doing school through Zoom or whatever it is. There's got to be this forced work-life balance where you have to figure out how to make that work. And the more we can do that, though there's some negative things to that, and I fully understand that, the positives to those things is that as that veil comes down, it allows those things to start blending together, and you see the importance of bringing the personal life into and accepting the fact that it's always been there. People's personal lives have always affected their performance at work. It's always been a part of who they are at work, their attitude, their actions, the way that they interact, the way that they're having a bad day, the way that they're a great worker, the way that they struggle in certain areas. That is who they are. It's their personal life. What this has allowed us to do is bridge those things together. And so I'm hopeful that as that's happened, this will bring about more opportunity for you guys to have good conversations about this. So quickly, I do want to talk about some of the common risk factors. This is a diagram that if you go on the National Suicide Prevention website, it's something that you can print out. It's something that you can put out. You can hang it in the break room or whatever. But I want to briefly go through these real quick. Do they have a history of substance abuse? These are risk factors for suicide, by the way. Do they have a physical disability or illness? Have they lost a friend recently to suicide? There are things that we see when somebody has especially with youth, if there's been a friend who has died by suicide, we'll start to see clusters where others start to go through the same thing. And that's tragic. Have they been exposed to any type of bullying behavior? And this is not just youth. This is stuff that we see in the construction world, especially with blue collar trades. There's a sense of, especially with men, there's a sense of giving each other a hard time. And then when there's the one that doesn't know how to accept it, they go harder on. And that person struggles. And they don't know how to talk about it. They don't know how to deal with it. And that would be considered bullying. Mental health conditions, of course. Recent death of a family member. Things that are going to bring about depressive behavior. Access to harmful means. Relationship problems. All those things are going to be risk factors for suicide. Now, drilling it down a little bit more. Alcohol and other substance use disorders, the feeling of hopelessness, impulsive or aggressive tendencies, history of trauma or abuse. I want to pause right here for this one. With a history of trauma or abuse, when somebody comes to us and they start to kind of, what we would say, kind of psychologically vomit all over you, what's your reaction to that? What's your view of that person? I know it's in many ways, human nature is to view that person immediately, whether you want to or not, as weak. Oh, this person does not know how to deal with relationships. This person does not know how to deal with their kids very well. This person does not know how to do that. What you have to understand is that that's what they're telling you. They're being honest with you. It doesn't matter the way that they're doing it. It's a way that it's not about it being a way that you have to like, or a way that's coming off as mature or professional. You have to see that as a sign that they're struggling, especially if you're a supervisor or a manager. That's something that's extremely important for you to take hold of. Now, I will say, I may say this a couple times, but it's also very important that you don't allow their burden to become your burdens. The whole point of being a gatekeeper is unlocking the door for them to walk through themselves, and you can walk through with them. But at no point you are taking on that burden yourself, because that also is going to put you in a place that's unhealthy and you're assuming too much. So again, that's what's so important about having the resources to be able to point them to. Major physical illness, a previous suicide attempt, of course, any family history of depression or anxiety, and then of course suicide. And if they've recently lost their job or had financial loss. Those are all things that are, of course, going to be things that we would point to. I kind of covered some of those, but I want to go through some of the warning signs. Feeling of being isolated or feeling alone. How many of you guys felt isolated during quarantine? It's a weird time. I know that even when we started getting back out with our friends, it was weird because you had this idea that even people that were close with us, how they dealt with it, how they dealt with the masking, how they dealt with the seriousness of it or not seriousness of it. All of those things there was time for us to build up perceptions about them without really ever engaging them in a real conversation. And so even when you start getting back together, there's a little bit of awkwardness, and just the fact that you hadn't been social with anybody for an extended period of time. Just being back around people felt awkward, at least it did for me. And I'm a very relationship guy. I love being with friends. I love spending time with them, but it still felt awkward. And there was that feeling of isolation. And so as we see those numbers and depression and anxiety go up, a lot of it is because of the lack of connection that we've been able to have during that time. Again, warning signs: aggressiveness, irritability, feeling like a burden to others. If you hear them making comments about that, like, oh, I just feel like I'm a burden to everybody in family. And we know that there are people that, when we start getting into the mental health world and you really get into the clinical side, I mean, there are personality disorders, things that we would classify as that there are people that sometimes are attention seeking, and there's things like that. But that's not your job to try to diagnose that or figure out if that's who they are. It's your job to try to point them to the resources of people that can help and help them differentiate those things. If you start seeing people giving things away, you start, obviously, I mean, this sounds crazy, but making funeral arrangements, engaging in very risky behavior, especially with teenagers. If they start really just not caring, they start going through and they're getting very destructive. Those are all warning signs of they need help. It's a cry for help, and they want somebody to notice. So I'm going to walk through this with you. These are the 5 steps. Again, if you look at the hashtag Be the One, here's the website, Be the One Too. It's talking about you being the gatekeeper to allow somebody in to get help with the resources that they have out there. So number 1 is extremely important. If there's nothing else that you remember today, this is the one thing that I really want you to remember, and it is ask. Asking the question, are you thinking about suicide, communicates that you're open to speaking about suicide in a non-judgmental and supportive way. Asking in this direct, unbiased manner can open the door for effective dialogue about their emotional pain. So one of the things that this is probably the biggest misconception about suicide, is that if you bring up the word suicide, that you are somehow planting this seed within their mind that now they're thinking about it. People who are struggling with depression and anxiety, people that are really struggling with thoughts of suicide, are already thinking about these things. So you starting to talk about it is doing what we just talked about earlier. It's bringing those things that are in their mind, the darkness of their mind, it's allowing them to bring those things into the light, to start having a conversation about those things and talk about it in a very real way, in a healthy way. Some questions you may ask are, how do you hurt and how can I help? But again, I cannot stress this enough. It's okay. And not only is it okay, it's encouraged that you ask them if this is something that they're actually considering. Second is keep them safe. The keep them safe step is about showing support for someone during the times when they have thoughts of suicide by putting time and distance between the person and their chosen means, especially things like medications and firearms. So questions that you can ask is, if they're going through this and they're saying, yes, in fact, I am thinking about suicide, starting to ask some questions to keep them safe. Have they already done anything to try to kill themselves before talking with you? Have they taken any medication? Have they done anything that would already, the reason why they're talking to you is maybe it's their last ditch effort to try to get some help, and they've already done something that is potentially going to harm themselves. So ask those questions. Does the person experiencing thoughts of suicide know how they will kill themselves? Do they have a plan? What's the timing for the plan? If you can start to get all these things, you can start to deconstruct and start to help them process through it and immediately get them the help that they need. The T.H. Chan School of Public Health states that reducing a suicidal person's access to highly lethal means or the chosen method for a suicide attempt is an important part of suicide prevention. A number of studies have indicated that when lethal means are made less available or less deadly, suicide rates by that method decline, and frequently suicide rates overall decline. So asking somebody if they have a gun in their house, asking them if they have prescription medications that they could take too much of. All those things are very important things for you to ask and things that they can get help with right away. This is extremely important. As you're coaching them through this, one of the common things that they may request from you is that please don't tell anybody about this. Why would they want that? Why would they ask that of you? Is it so that you're the only person that can help them and you're the only person that can walk them through this? Not likely. It's because they're embarrassed by it. They're hurt. They're vulnerable. They're expressing something to you, and they're worried that it's going to get out. But I need you to understand, in no way can you ever keep their suicidal plans a secret. Because what that does is, just like we talked about earlier, is it puts you in a position where now you are assuming a burden that's not yours. You're taking on way too much. And you're also probably not qualified to walk them through it in a way that's going to truly bring them health. So the best way to handle the situation is say, look, hey, as far as the workplace, I'm not going to be, trust me, I'm not going to be talking to people about this. But I am going to lead you to resources with people that can help. And if you're not the HR manager, hey, let's talk to the HR manager, because there's a lot of employee assistance programs and things like that that we want to make sure that you can get help with. And this, I cannot keep this a secret. This is something that you need help that's far beyond me. And it's as simple as that. Okay. And if they don't like it, that's okay. That's not your issue to have to make them feel okay. You just need to be honest and open about what you're going to do and the plan that you're going to have for them. The third step is be there. Connectedness is a key protective factor, not only against suicide as a whole, but in terms of the escalation of thoughts of suicide into acting on those thoughts. Research has also shown that connectedness acts as a buffer against hopelessness and psychological pain. By being there, we have a chance to alleviate or even eliminate some of these significant factors. How many of you feel like I'm not going to get really deep into this, and there's a lot of places we could go with this, but how many of you feel like our culture gets increasingly disconnected? In a society where we feel as though we're more connected than ever because of the internet, because of social media, you guys know that those are fake, right? It's fabricated. It's not like some big plan to make us feel fabricated. It just is what it is. As things have developed, it is what it is. It's something that has decreased our ability to feel connected. And so what do you see people do on social media? People that don't, and I'm not judging anybody. I get it. I understand where people go. They're longing for connectedness. And so they start to just get into this rabbit hole of posting and things that they want to be edified by, and they want other people to feel connected to, but it's not real. So the things that we have to do are fight to get back a way of connectedness and find ways to walk alongside people in a real, honest way. And so my challenge to you guys is, after you leave this, is to really truly think about this. You guys, anytime we're in a place like this, it's not about the messenger. It's not about the things, the detailed things that I'm saying or the way that I'm saying it. It's just an opportunity. This is an opportunity for all of us to leave this place and go think about and be challenged by what we're doing in our own lives to make sure that our own mental health is good. Because if everybody in here has a good mental health, you all have the individual opportunity to go and help other people. When you can go and help other people, that makes you feel more connected. That makes you feel more valuable. That makes your own identity increase with a sense of satisfaction that you're here in this world right now at the time we're in to help the people around you. And that's an amazing thing that we all have the opportunity to do. So find a way to connect. Fourth thing is help them connect. Our Are they currently seeking a mental health professional? These are things that you could ask. And by the way, all these questions, every single one of these things is on the website. So all of these resources, there's a plethora of things that you can go and research. You don't have to remember all these things. Just go and find it and just pull it up on your phone if you're even having a conversation with somebody. Have they ever seen anybody in the past? Is this an option for them currently? Are there other mental health resources in the community that can effectively help? This is another good one, is the My3 app. You can have them download this. It puts 3 individuals, the people that they feel that they can trust to reach out to. It also has a button on there where they can immediately connect to the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline also allows you to text people that have been trained to kind of walk through with it, so they don't even have to call. They can text, they can have a chat conversation with somebody who's been trained to deal with that. So that's a great resource. And finally, the importance of following up. Following up, I want to make just a distinction. Again, it's not about you doing everything for them so that they feel better. It's just sending a little text. Hey, thinking about you. How many of you guys have received texts like that over the time where we felt disconnected? How much did that help? How much did that give you a little burst of energy, a little burst of joy to know that somebody was thinking about you? And when you're dealing with something that's so difficult to understand it within yourself, and you're dealing with a depression and anxiety that you just cannot seem to get out of, those are little things that matter so much. And that is the stuff that will make people want to choose to stay another day. Just choose to stay one more day. Okay, I'm going to commit to one more day. I'm going to commit to showing up to work one more day, and just continuing to do that until they finally see themselves getting out of it, whether it's through medication, whether it's through therapy, whether it's through just going through a phase in their life where they've really been struggling and now they've kind of come out of it. But following up is critical. And my challenge to you today is to, after you leave, is to find one person that you can just check in with and say, hey, I'm just thinking about you. Doesn't mean they're struggling. Doesn't mean anything. It just means that you're going to be intentional to say, hey, I just wanted you to know I'm thinking about you. Because right now, in the week that we're in, stuff that we're dealing with, everybody needs to know that there's somebody out there that cares for them and that wants to be in relationship with them. And one other thing that I want to just kind of really hit home before I start getting into what your organizations can do is, I just lost my train of thought. It's going to be really good, though, I promise you. But that's how my mind works. I got like 50 different things going on in there. So we'll go ahead. Maybe it'll come back to me. What can your organizations do? So one of the biggest things you guys can do is aspire to zero. I know this sounds a little bit crazy, but if you can aspire to 0 suicides within your organization, what does that do for you as an organization? That sets your goal to starting to invest into mental health. If you openly aspire to 0, that means that the people within your organization feel like, hey, I'm a part of a culture, I'm a part of an organization that actually does believe in this and that it's important. And so I would encourage all of you to aspire to 0. Toolbox talks on suicide. There's a lot of things that we do within especially the blue collar trades, where we're sending out toolbox talks that are related to all sorts of different types of safety issues and things like that. We highly recommend that you start putting these things in there as well. I would also recommend that when you do that, you have a conversation with your supervisors or those that are leading it, and you get them to understand the importance of it, not to make light of it, not to express it as like, oh gosh, here we go. Here's another thing, like they do a lot of other safety topics, by the way. That's my world, so I'm used to that. But that's extremely important for them to understand just how important that is and the way that they're expressing it. Conduct a stand down for suicide prevention. This is true within construction companies. We do every year, there's a national stand down for fall prevention, because there's a lot of fall fatalities, a lot of fall injuries that happen every year. And so we recommend within those organizations that you also do a stand down for suicide prevention. Educate and inspire your workforce. Give them tools, give them resources, help them understand how they are important, how their mental health is important, but also how they can help others. And sharing stories of hope and recovery. It doesn't have to be something where you're reading through, hey, here's all the statistics on suicide, and everybody feel like, oh, that feels amazing. Doesn't feel good at all. So maybe read, and if you go through on the National Suicide Prevention website, they have several stories that will of individuals who have have successfully come out of that maybe still struggle with it, but have gotten away from more thoughts of suicide and things like that. And so their stories of hope are things that you could also read. They're usually pretty short. There's also some videos. You don't even have to do anything. Just play the video. All that stuff would be very, very useful. I know that's probably really hard to see. Down at the very bottom is the gatekeeper, what they can do at a foundational level, what you can do within your organization. And then there's an advanced support network, which is the things, the free resources that are available, and then the mental health professionals at the top of that, depending on what level they're at. So those are all things that you guys can do and promote. Locally, I know that Lost and Found, if you're familiar with that organization, they also have plenty of resources. Borough Behavioral Health. Our area has a ton of resources that you guys can pull from outside of just what's online. There's a lot of fantastic support available, and I'll tell you, please, if you, I will stay after this and I will talk to people all day if I have to. Call me. I'm on LinkedIn. You guys can message me. If it's something that you're feeling insecure about or something that you don't feel confident in within your organization, I'll help you. I'll at least point you in the right direction of getting a resource so that you can have people come in and start having these conversations within your workplace, and get you connected with the local resources that many of which I've worked with over the years and I think very highly of. And I know that they have a lot of great people that care very deeply about people that are going through this. So in conclusion, I do just kind of want to bring up one quick thing. Understand that mental health is on a spectrum. Okay, I was trying to think of how to explain this, and it may not be perfect, but I think a great example would be the type 1 and type 2 diabetes, to give you an example. Okay, you've got type 1 diabetes, which affects probably 10% of those with diabetes. It's a genetic deal that they're born with. There's literally nothing they can do about it. They're going to be on insulin for the rest of their lives. Then you have type 2, which is about 90% of those with diabetes, somewhere in there. And that is also a genetic predisposition, but it's also lifestyle. There's also things that they bring on themselves, the choices that they've made and the food that they eat, the lifestyle that they live, that has led to them having that. When we think about mental health, it's very, very similar to that. Okay? There's a spectrum of where we would consider people to be healthy. That means that they're able to just go throughout their day in a healthy way. They're able to find joy. They're able to find happiness and peace. And they're able to love well. They're able to have and engage in relationships. And obviously, that's what we're all aspiring to be. Many of us are struggling within this middle range where we're coping with things. We're things that are brought to us, things that we didn't deal with, things with our parents, things with our kids, loss of a loved one, whatever it may be. Those are things that we're trying our best to deal with. And then there's those that feel overwhelmed by it so much that they're struggling and they don't know how to get help, to the point where it can lead to a point of where they are just unwell. Now, when I say the diabetes thing, please understand, I'm being very general, and I'm also being very gracious, understanding that there are many, many variables when we talk about people's mental health, but challenging you to make sure that you're putting yourself in a position where you're feeding your mind and you're feeding your life with things that will better your mental health, because I promise you it can get better, even in the way that just the stuff that you fill your mind with. How many of you guys, anybody choose to stop watching the news after the election? How much better do you feel? Feel pretty good, because I promise you, even though we feel like we can change things, we feel like, oh gosh, you can be so just adamant about this is the way that it is. I promise you, your perspective and the amount of anxiety that you're putting into it, the angst that you feel, is not going to change anything. It's not. So finding a way to push those things aside is bettering your mental health. The amount of time that you spend on social media, the way that you view social media, the way that you see it as allowing it to be something that you understand is fabricated, not in a way of negativity, because also what we do is we trick ourselves into being like, what's this person posting on here? That's so fake. That's not what I'm talking about, because that now you're talking about an attitude that is bringing negativity into your life. So if you find yourself doing those things, I'd encourage you to step away and find a way to move away from those things. I know that these are things that we talk about all the time. I know that they're things that are just overly communicated. There are documentaries on Netflix talking about it. There's tons of stuff. It's an overwhelming amount of information, but it's true. And at some point, you have to figure out a way to remove those things from your life if you want to get to a place of better mental health, especially if you're already struggling with outside stressors. Just having kids. I know those of us that are in our 30s and 40s that are just constantly just dealing with running kids. I know for me, when the quarantine hit, one of the best things that happened was not running my kids all over the place. Like, thank God. The amount of gas money that I saved was amazing. But really, I mean, it's one of those things where you're just able to slow down and appreciate. And hopefully, again, you guys were able to refocus some of those things and think about what's important. But so again, my challenge to you guys is that you would not only get those things out of your life, but look for opportunities to pour into others. The amount of stress that we have, how much of it is self-induced by things that we just talked about, to the point where you don't feel like you can handle any more stress? I can't handle this person's stress anymore because I got my own stresses. Well, maybe if you carved out and got rid of some of those stressors, you would have more capacity to deal with somebody that needs help. And realizing that stress, just like the adversity we talked about earlier and how adversity brings positive things, that adversity within you and what you're experiencing with the stress of walking alongside somebody is actually extremely fulfilling and brings you a level of connectedness that you probably didn't even understand you had the capacity to do. So you don't have to be a clinical counselor. You don't have to be a degree in psychology or anything like that. You just have to be there for somebody. So I encourage you, as you go back to your workplace, as you think about these things, as you talk about these things, just be willing to be a gatekeeper, be willing to be somebody that points them to the right direction, points them to the resources that they need. And I promise you, you'll get fulfillment out of that. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. It's a Friday afternoon, 70-some degrees outside, sunny. It's an amazing day. It's appreciate it. So thank you guys.